everybody, it's Brooke Sellas with B Squared Media coming to you with Transforming Retail, how to leverage social selling for acquisition and retention. To tell you a little bit about me, I'm Brooke Sellas. I'm the founder and CEO of B Squared Media, and really all of the things you see here on the slide are things that you can Google about me. So I'm going to give you something you can't Google, which is I am your pickle friend. So if you ever have that pickle that you get with a sandwich or a meal and you don't really want the pickle, I want the pickle. I'll take all the pickles. So I'm the pickle friend. So let's get started with a bunch of C words that we're going to go through today to kind of explain how to get more out of your retail social media with social selling. And the first one is change, right? The social media landscape, if you haven't noticed, has drastically changed, right? Engagement's down year over year. It's harder and harder to get your content seen. And why do we think this is happening? Well, there's a lot of generational shifts that are going on. Millennials are now coming into buying power as well as the younger generations, and they really expect instant communication throughout the sales cycle, including on social media channels. Interactions are digitally dominated. So what does this mean? It means basically that more and more people are using social media to research brands, research new products, look at reviews and brand conversations to decide what shortlist they want to look at for consideration and then purchase. And then obviously digital transformation is accelerating more and more, right? It's getting hard to keep up with all of the AI tools that are coming out. A lot of people want to use chatbots for social to deliver kind of that social or digital customer experience, but sometimes that doesn't work in their favor. This is a very scary number, which is the Edelman Trust Barometer. Last year, they came out with this number, 2023, which is 40%. And if you are a US retailer, essentially 40% is the amount of consumers, the number of consumers who trust retail brands or trust brands. It's not very good, right? We're missing over half. 60% of people just don't believe in us as brands. So what do we do to combat that, especially when it comes to social media? Well, you have to know and use consumer emotion in your messaging, product, and experience. A lot of brand content, which we'll talk about, is based on cliches and facts, and that's just not cutting it anymore. You need to tighten community bonds, make people feel like they're a part of something when it comes to your brand and your social media communities, and you have to prove your brand promise more urgently than ever before. So if your brand promise is free shipping and all of a sudden you start charging $5.99, you don't really have a promise to stand on anymore, and you're probably going to lose a lot of your customers. Essentially, what I'm asking you to do is create human experiences on digital channels. And I know that sounds really hard, but we're going to go through today how to make it a little bit easier for you. So let's talk about customer care. This is always a little bit deceiving because people are like, wait, I thought we were talking about sales, and we are. The word customer is a little deceiving because we're talking about would-be customers and current customers of the brand. So when we talk about social media customer care at B Squared Media, what we're calling that is the service of responding to anyone's demands, questions, needs, competitor comparisons, right? Through social media. And the reason why it's so important is because it's one of the only marketing initiatives that both attracts and retains customers. So working with brands like we do, which are typically middle-sized to enterprise-sized brands, a lot of them in retail, we have not only been able to retain customers through our social media customer care efforts, but we've also been able to attract new customers and build out acquisition tracking, which allows us to see how much revenue we can bring in through social media customer care and acquisition. Customer service on social channels is also growing just based on the way users are using social media. So a lot of Facebook users, about 70%, want to use Facebook as a support channel, either Facebook or Facebook Messenger. On Twitter, or X as we're now calling it, almost the same amount, 64% of those people would rather tweet a brand than call them. And I think this is just the way social media is starting to move. We've seen year over year the instances of people using social media as a support channel grow. However, only 24% of companies say that they're satisfied with their social media service. right? That is not good. If we know that more and more people are using social media as a support channel, but so few brands are set up with a social care, social customer service, social selling, whatever you want to call it, service or program, we've got a big disconnect that we need to fill. Customer care response times. I am sure you have heard a lot of this, and I don't need to tell you again, but responding quickly on social to any of these support or sales type inquiries needs to happen quickly, right? Most people expect a response on social media within an hour or less. Sometimes it's as small as a 30-minute window, and that's happening 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So you can really no longer afford to be a 9-to-5 brand in a 24/7 world. I love this quote from Justin Howard, who is the CEO and president of Sprout Social, which is a social media tool. He says, social is no longer just one aspect of customer care. It's the determining factor of an impactful care strategy and, more importantly, lasting brand success. And this is what we've seen with our customers who are using our social care program to both retain and acquire new customers through social channels. So let's talk about connection, because I think this is where a lot of brands get things wrong. Hate to say it, but it's true. When I ask people or brands, people who work at brands, like, why are you so important? Like, why does your brand matter? We'll get into why in a minute, but essentially what it boils down to, I should back up, is that we know as people that connection is a two-way thing, right? It's a two-way street. But brands are counting connections as like a social media follow or an email subscription or a form fill, but that's not connection, right? So when I ask our retail clients, why does your brand matter? A lot of them will say like, oh, because we have 1 million followers or 500,000 followers or whatever it may be, but that's not connection, right? So this is what I would ask them and what I'm asking you today. How many of your followers are actually engaged? What do those engagement numbers look like for you? By the way, Social Insider put out a research earlier this year that said the average engagement, aggregate of all of the social channels is about 3.5%. So if you're getting less than 3.5%, that's considered low engagement. If you're getting around 3.5%, that's average. And if you're higher than that, great. But how many of your followers are engaged? Do you know what that number is? I urge you to find out. How many of them give you feedback on social? You have all these followers. Hopefully you're having a lot of engagement and conversations with these followers. And through that conversation, how many of them are customers or would-be customers who are leaving you voice of customer data or feedback, right? And the last question I would ask is, how many of your followers convert without paid media? If you don't know this number, or if this number is 0, you definitely need to consider a social media customer care program. So if we look at the psychology behind why people buy, right? This is a Harvard study that was done several years ago. 95% of why we buy is based on emotion. Only 5% is rational, right? It's why we have buyer's remorse, because we buy something and then all of a sudden rationality kicks in and we're like, oh no, I shouldn't have done that, right? So the best brands know this, and they sell feelings, not products. Apple doesn't sell phones. They sell exclusivity, right? If you're an Apple fan, you are a big, huge Apple fan. You've got tons of loyalties to the brand and you'll defend them to the end. You'll die on that hill, right? Gucci sells luxury, not clothes. And Mercedes or BMW or any of the other luxury cars you can think of sell status, not cars. Tesla probably sells innovation, but not cars, right? So how can you learn how to sell that experience, right? Sell that feeling versus the product that you might sell. Well, I'm going to take you back a little ways and talk about this terrible thing, or at least the name is terrible, the social penetration theory. We're going to call it the SPT, or the onion theory, from here on out, because we don't want to say that P word again. But essentially, this was a sociology study that was done back in the 70s. And these two social psychologists said, hey, how do people build relationships? And they came up with this theory, the SPT. And essentially what they said is there are 4 levels of disclosure. And the more we disclose to one another, the more we feel connected to someone. And my undergraduate thesis study looked at the social penetration theory, whoops, I said it again, the SPT, and said, hey, do we form relationships the same way we do in real life on social media? And what I found was, yes, we absolutely do. So the basis of the theory is that there's these 4 levels of disclosures: cliches, facts, opinions, and feelings. If you look at most branded content that's out there today, it's very cliche or it's very factual. But that's not where trust building, which we talked about earlier, is sorely needed, and where relationship building, loyalty comes from. You have to get to opinions and feelings, and this is where brand content should live if you want more engagement and eventually more conversions through social. If you want conversions, I can't stress this enough. You need to stop building a follower base and start building a customer base. Too many brands are focused on a follower base. They're focused on the numbers. But guess what? Those followers don't care about your content. They don't care about leaving you feedback. You know who does care about your content and leaving you feedback? Your customers and your would-be customers. So you really have to flip the script on that mindset and start to build a customer base on social media and stop with the numbers of followers. So let's get into some of the content, right? People are not starved for content. There's plenty of it. They're actually starved for connection. And this is why I think we've seen engagement numbers drop, because the content's living in the cliches and the facts, and it's doing nothing to connect with opinions and feelings. So let's get into it. So if we look at these 4 disclosures again, here's kind of the definition of each one. Pretty understandable, right? The most important thing that you need to know about a fact is that it's not actually considered a fact unless it's not otherwise known. So if I sat here and I told you my name was Brooke, you'd be like, yeah, Brooke, you already told us that. We already know that, right? But if I told you my name was Jennifer and I've gone by Brooke since birth, that is a fact. You did not know that. I am revealing information to you, right, that could sway our relationship. So that's an important distinction about facts. Opinions obviously expose more information about your customer or you as the brand. And then feelings, or these emotional disclosures, are the deepest we can go. This really tells us if your brand core values align with how I feel and my personal core values. I want to align with your brand. I want to build that relationship, trust, and loyalty with your brand. Hopefully, as long as you don't break brand promises. So here are a couple of examples. Pro Flowers, this isn't even a great picture of flowers if you ask me, but they said this is your reminder to stop and smell the roses. They have the little rose emoji, and they've got this bouquet of flowers that I just don't find that attractive, right? This is very cliche. United Airlines, they're giving you the facts about this deal, but what else is there? There's nothing there that wants me to connect with with United Airlines and take this trip necessarily, right? It's just kind of like skimming the surface. It's checking a box. It's just throwing content out there and seeing what happens. If we look at some of the brands with opinions and feelings, Pro Flowers comes back and totally redeems themselves with this post, which is, I can't and I won't slander carnations. They're gorge. #unpopular opinion. I love this. Because guess what happened? They got a bunch of people conversing with them on this post saying they either love or they hated carnations. Now, let's say I'm Pro Flowers. Couldn't I see that if, let's say 86% of the comments said they loved flowers, they loved carnations, couldn't I then say hey, carnation lovers, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to do a buy one, get one or a percentage off? Yeah, I could, because now I've collected that voice of customer data through conversations, through feedback, and I can use that to run campaigns that will help me make more money, right? So I've got examples here from McDonald's and Whataburger. Oh, Whataburger is a Texas brand. I'm from Texas, and This is hilarious. They actually ask this question every so often. Quick question, is it Whataburger or Waterburger? Because at this point, even we're confused. Well, in Texas, we say Waterburger, even though it is Whataburger. And you can see how crazy the engagement went on this post, and the posts that they make even now go just as crazy, right? Because people love to give their opinions and their feelings about if it's Whataburger or Waterburger. Everybody from Texas knows it's Waterburger. And then let's talk about sales-driven content. So a lot of people want to talk about features of their product, right? But features are facts, right? They're boring. This is not doing anything to move the relationship forward. Instead, you should focus on the benefits, right? Because benefits are how people will feel using your products or services. Another great point with sales type content is selling with user-generated content. I've got examples here from Snack Magic and Glossier, which, by the way, Glossier does an amazing job of using user-generated content to sell. So I would go follow them if you're not already. But here's one of their users saying, hear me out. You need to make a Glossier deodorant. They actually used her post and then said, hey, guess what? Here it is, right? And people went wild. You can see all of the likes, and they got a lot of comments as well, but it leads right to the shop to go buy that deodorant. So it's like, hey, we heard you say you wanted this. We made it just for you because we listen and because we care. Brand conversation is so important, right? How many of you are actually going out as the brand on social media and commenting on posts or other companies' posts or whatever it may be? If you're not doing this, you're missing out, because commenting gives your business exposure. It shows that you're listening. It leads to that collection of voice of customer data like we talked about with the ProFlowers post, and it builds connections with targeted people and or other businesses. And by the way, it has one of the highest return on investments on social media. So if you aren't engaging in brand conversation, but you're complaining about not getting any sales from social, this might be why. That brings me to conversation. So how do we have these conversations that connect? Well, if we look at the SPT, this is my personal mix of what I think the SPT should look like. Only 10% of your content should be cliches. 30%, I'm giving you a nice, what I think is big number for facts and the features, right? But 60% of your content really needs to be focused on opinions and feelings. So how do we do that? Here are a few examples. Horse.com, I'm a horse mom, so I have a lot of horse apparel examples and whatnot, but it says, if blank were a discipline, my horse would be a world champion. Well, here's the thing about horse people. We love to talk about our horses. So this got a lot of traction because people were saying, mine was, if spooking were a discipline, right, my horse would be a world champion. A ton of people got engaged. It's fun, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be about something that you're buying, but it's top of mind. It keeps people engaged. And the more brand conversation that's happening, the more social signals you're getting in your favor so that more people see your content and your page and hopefully become a follower. Not that we're focusing on followers. Here's another great brand, Wheezy Towels. I've seen a lot of content like this recently. Which way is the right way to get ready? And they give you all of these options, and people went bananas, right? Because they were like, what? Nobody does number one, So it was I like to call these like a non-controversy controversy. It's a fun controversy, right? Nobody's saying anything that's going to start a fight, but people really love to give their opinions and their feelings about what the right way to get ready is. And then you see Wheezy Towels actually gives their opinion and feeling too by saying, but make it a robe, makeup, outfit, hair, right? So they're giving their opinion there. Here's what not to do. This is a big bike brand. I won't name and shame, but you can see that they've posted a piece of content and look at all of the comments. Do you notice something about those comments? There's no conversation back from the brand. This is such a waste of potential acquisition and retention, and just getting your content and those social signals to build up and getting that content spread to other people. Do not do this. And absolutely do not do this. Here's a hair brand, and you can see somebody's reaching out and saying, I'm having problems checking out. Can you help me? A week later, they came back because they didn't have anything, and you can see that the brand still didn't respond. And when I checked later on, they still hadn't responded. So please don't let this be you, because this would be ruining trust, ruining that brand promise, and then probably losing a customer. So brand conversations are actually now weighted as important or more important than online reviews. This is a study that was done by Twitter and Publicis back when Twitter was cool, before it was X. And online shoppers are now looking at these brand conversations and deciding based on how the brand converses with their community and their audiences if they want to buy or get loyal, right, with this brand. What the study also found was that brand conversation, whether brand initiated, so by you, the brand, or shopper initiated, significantly impacts purchase consideration at any point during the digital customer journey, or the DCJ. So literally, brand conversations will help you get more revenue through social media. Social listening is worth mentioning here too, because a lot of people confuse social media monitoring with social media listening. Monitoring is where things hit your inbox and you're able to reply, but not everybody's inboxing you. Not everybody's tagging you. Not everybody's talking about the brand directly. They might be talking about your products, which probably don't, each have their own handle. So if you look at these examples here, you can see Jeremy is tagging Apple Music. So if I'm Apple Music, I would see that notification and be able to respond. But when you look over here, John mentions Apple Music, but does not tag them. If you are not using social listening, you would not get a notification on this conversation. Here's another example with Waze. This person says, imagine falling in love with someone, and then I find out they use Apple Maps instead of Google Maps. And then Waze comes in on this conversation and says, we can always convince them to change their ways. Ha ha, funny, right? But they're probably using social listening, because at no point at this point in the conversation did anybody tag Waze or mention Waze. So they are probably listening on their keyword or maybe on their competitor keywords. Now we're going to tie it all together with conversion, everybody's favorite C. So here's where we are so far. We know we have to create human experiences on digital channels. We know that people using social media for support is growing and growing. We know that buying is 95% emotion. We know the difference between copy and content. We know that brand conversations significantly impact purchase consideration. And we know that social listening can help us become proactive for social selling, right? Listening for those instances of when people are mentioning your products, but maybe not necessarily tagging you directly. Here is an actual snippet of a report for one of our retail clients. They have 12 product lines, and these are 4 of the 12 product lines. We went out and we asked, how much of the conversation do you think is retention, and how much of the conversation on social do you think is acquisition? Across the board, all of our clients said 0 to 5% would be acquisition, and most of it would be retention based, right? Customers coming through and troubleshooting with their product or service. What we found for all the clients was that they all had at least 20% acquisition chatter happening on their social channels. And this client in particular, 4 of their product lines, look at this acquisition, right? 77%, 80%, 63%, 67%. And this happens month over month for this brand. They had nothing planned, nothing going, no program to address these sales support inquiries and then close the deal on the customer's channel of choice, which is social media. It's no longer enough to move someone off of social media to try to close the deal. If you can close it on social, you should. And this is really how you increase those social selling numbers and revenue from social. One of the other things that you could do, right, if you were using social listening, is you could apply dollar amounts through tagging to all of the unique conversations that you're having. So MSRP or SKU numbers, right? Then you would be able to say like, hey, if we're getting 70% acquisition on this channel, that equals $1.2 million in potential revenue. Then you could use track links, promo codes, special landing pages with your social care team to close those deals. Like, hey, buy this thing, and if you do it within the next 24 hours using this promo code, we'll give you free shipping, right? Once they use that code, that money is now attributed to social care or social media selling. Then you could use those links with social listening, right? Beyond when somebody is talking about the product, offer them that same deal as the people who are coming directly to you. And now you've got another chance at social selling in a more cold way, but still in a way that most people aren't doing. Ultimately, customer care is just consultative selling, right? You have to actively listen to your buyers, ask questions, be objective, focus on bringing them solutions, very valuable, helpful information, and then selling them only when the intent is there and when the time is right. If you loved this presentation, I encourage you to sign up for our Lost to Loyal newsletter, which you can snip here on the QR code. I'll share a lot more information about how we do all of these social selling programs and customer care programs with our clients. And thank you so much for joining me. I will now bring it over to Q&A.